Hey, beautiful people. Hey, beautiful people. Viv going live from York. Bit late. Sorry about that. Just sorting out some technical stuff. So, some interesting things have happened to me since I was at Centre Parks. You might have watched my live there when I was talking about the one word, the book I was reading. So, I had a bit of an incident whilst at Centre Parks, which was a bit shocking. I swallowed some water and couldn't breathe for about a minute and stuff like that. And it was on the day that I was going to do a ceremony for my dad because it was 2 years since his death. And some interesting things have happened since then. So Imbolc happened. So that's one of the Celtic Wheel of the Year festivals that I really like celebrating. Basically means, what does it mean? It means, I wrote it down. I've totally forgotten. It's totally gone from my brain. Means full belly, I think. And it's the beginning of spring, basically. So when the ewes are beginning to lactate and they're pregnant, and there's going to be lambing season soon and stuff like that. So I love celebrating that. It's a really good time. It's like the new year. So great to start planning and thinking about what you want to do in the coming year. And I know a lot of people do that at New Year's Eve, but you're still in winter at that point, and we should just be chilling and looking after ourselves and stuff. So I was at a drumming group, not a drumming group, a dream group on Imbolc, and we did a really nice healing journey to Bridget, who's celebrated in Ireland and is celebrated around Imbolc, and did a healing journey and went and got my power back from having left a bit of me when through that shock. So quite often what happens when you have things that are shocking or upsetting, we have words for it, which is really good in the English language. We have like, oh, I went to pieces is a good example of sometimes when you lose your energy. So from a shamanic point of view, we'd say you might have lost a bit of your soul, but it could be you've lost a bit of your power or a bit of your energy, or you've left a bit of yourself there. So always good to listen to yourself when you're talking about things like that. So if you've split up from someone and you feel like they've taken a bit of you with them, or when someone dies and you feel like you haven't felt the same since, that can sometimes be a really good indication that you need to do something about getting your energy back, or a soul part, go and see a shamanic practitioner or some sort of energy healer to really look at that. So it was really good for me that I got to do that like the week after, because I hadn't really felt very great since then. Obviously there was physical issues because I'd been quite ill afterwards, but obviously it was so shocking that I had left a bit of me there. And that is something that I'm aware of. I'm quite aware of that now, having done my own work around that and doing that for other people. And then I did a really good guided soul recovery with somebody a couple of days later. Again, we were talking about St. Bridget of Kildare. So she's actually the patron saint of one of the patron saints of Ireland, but there is sort of a mix between her and the goddess Bridget, who's a goddess of healing and fire and stuff like that. So if you want to look into it, I'll put a link below, because it's a really interesting, she was a really interesting woman, and the sort of moulding together of the goddess Bridget and the St. Bridget of Kildare is really, really interesting. But what I just thought I'd say, what came up for me after that incident was a lot of stuff that I needed to revisit around the miscarriage I had. And I'd never really sort of picked up the sort of synchronicities between the fact that it was Imbolc that all of this was happening. And actually that's when my second pregnancy should have been born. So she was due around the 2nd of February 2004. And I might have got that slightly wrong, but it was definitely the beginning of February. So she was due around Imbolc. And obviously I had this incident at the swimming pool around the same time as my dad had died. And then I was doing all these sort of healing journeys. And suddenly I was thinking, oh my goodness, that's when she was due to be born. And it was such a horrible miscarriage I had. And anybody who knows about molar pregnancy miscarriages, you get followed afterwards because it can become cancerous. So it's a pretty horrible situation to go through anyway, like any miscarriage, losing a child. But you then have this follow-up for quite a few months where they advise you not to get pregnant. And I desperately wanted to get pregnant again, but you're advised not to. And there's a whole thing that comes with it. And if you've had one, you're way more likely to have another one. Obviously, there is this cancerous side of it, that they can grow out of control and become cancer. So there's that sort of scary thing. Plus the fact that mine was quite rare from the point of view of normally you miscarry it normally, but I didn't. My body kept hold of it. So I had all this stuff around that, and I didn't really grieve properly. And I know that was something that happened for me because I was being followed up, and then I got pregnant with my daughter. I never really took the time to properly process what had happened and grieve for it. So it wasn't really a surprise to me that suddenly all these things came up, because I'd had this shocking event, and it was around the time of that I was celebrating, honouring my dad's death. So I had that whole thing. And then there was, that idea of new stuff happening and planning, and what am I going to do this year with my business and some new services that I want to bring in. So my mind was quite crowded with stuff. So I thought I'd just share that some of the things that I've done to support myself. I've done a lot of journaling. Obviously, I've done the soul retrievals and stuff. But as I said, if you're feeling that any of that would be helpful, then please get in touch with me about that, or look up soul retrievals or power retrievals. That's something that a lot of shamanic practitioners do. Or go and talk to an energy healer, or get some sort of advice if you're feeling that maybe you've lost a bit of yourself through shock. But also be aware that when things like that happen, sometimes it brings up unresolved stuff from previously. So I've done a lot of stuff around losing my daughter in between my two children, but it still comes up when something else comes up, and sometimes that needs revisiting. So I found it quite interesting that when I was doing my guided soul retreat recovery session with my friend, I actually sort of saw 3 versions of me from when I was young, and one of them was from when I'd nearly drowned on a school trip. So again, there's that link between the fact I nearly drowned at Center Parks and the fact that at the age of 11, I'd nearly drowned then as well. So just be gentle with yourself. Realize that sometimes these things do come up out of sometimes what seems absolutely nowhere. Journaling's really good. If you do any dream sort of incubating practice where you actually actively think about something before going to bed because you want some answers through your dreams, that's a really great thing to do. Obviously, I'm a massive advocate of oils, so I've been using a lot of Console and Peace, which are fantastic blends, which I used a lot around my dad's death. So it just allows me to have the space to process some of those things and maybe do some more journaling and thinking about things. But also I'm going to do a big blog post or series of posts, because the incident with my having the termination with my daughter, there was some obstetrics issues with the way I was treated at hospital. And that's also brought up a whole load of stuff that I don't think I dealt with around the birth of my son, and when I got pregnant with my daughter, and some of the incidences that happened when I was pregnant with her, but also when we found out that we'd lost CK2, as I call her, because she was number 2. And some of the ways we were treated by the medical staff, which also has its own sort of disempowering thing. And so all these things sort of build up, and sometimes they just come out with you out of nowhere. So I just wanted to sort of share that. I've been processing a lot of those things. As I said, I've been being quite gentle with myself, being a bit more aware of making sure I'm hydrating enough, taking enough fluids in, because that's something that I forget to do when I'm a bit stressed, and that can really help the flow of stuff. Obviously, using essential oils, making sure I'm diffusing things, taking care of myself, and talking to those people I know who will understand that these things happen. And that's why I sort of wanted to share it, because if you've been through something similar where you're sort of dealing with the shock of something or grieving for one thing, you may suddenly realize that there's a whole load of other stuff that you didn't even know that you're having to cope with. So just be gentle with yourself. Writing is fantastic, doing a bit of movement. So I've been listening to some good music recently just to lift my spirits, make sure I'm moving my body and not just getting too down in my feelings and stuff. And if you want to know about any of the stuff that I do, obviously get in touch. I've done a lot of healing over the last week because I knew I was dealing with some of these things. I'm always happy to help other people. If you want to know a bit more about what I do and how I can help you, if any of these things have resonated, please get in touch. I'm more than happy to have a free talk with you, a free chat. And if you can think of anybody else who might resonate with what I've spoken about, then just send them this video, especially if they've had a miscarriage or a pregnancy miscarriage. They are quite different to the normal one, as I say, with the follow-up that you go through, which can be quite distressing. So just thought I'd share that with everybody because it's been something I've been dealing with over the last couple of weeks. And if you want to find out a bit more about In Bulk, I'll put a link to that below as well, because it's a really interesting. If you're somebody who gets fed up with New Year's being the new year and you think, but it's still cold and miserable and I'd prefer it to be slightly later in the year, then you need to look at In Bulk as being your new year. Okay, remember, you're fantastic, fantastic, wonderful, lovely people. Don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. And I love you all. Take care. Bye.